Nathan. Nathan, what's going on? You are on with Jimmy and Ben. How the heck are you?
I am awesome. What's up, you guys? Hey, yeah, so I don't know. This was like months ago I called. You were still a student doctor, Ben.
Oh, wow.
And I am now.
So that was like over a year ago.
It was a long time ago, but I'm in grad school, so I don't know how the hell you were like doing this show and doing all the stuff you were doing. You must be a hell of a lot more organized than I am.
Oh, I'm not. I just don't prioritize my own life. But yeah, what's your topic today?
Yeah, I feel it. Okay, so yeah, for people who don't remember that call, I'm secular, humanist, skeptic, all that kind of stuff. And one year, my mom got me a Reiki treatment as a Christmas present. I'm like, oh, thanks, Mom. But I went to appease her and expected to be bored out of my mind and, expected nothing but cringe out of the experience. But I experienced some things that I just haven't experienced before or since. And they told me that you might be able to shed more light on it than they were at the time.
Yeah.
I experienced the greatest pain relief. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask what experiences specifically.
Okay, so the first notable one was a feeling of, it's going to sound kind of strange, but it was a feeling of warmth that sharpened into like heat, that sharpened into like extreme heat in my foot. And after that, like, it felt like something broke. If I had to describe it, it felt like a spear of, I mean, I've never been impaled by a spear in my foot before, but I imagine it would feel like that. Something that broke through from my foot into like my hip area. And I looked down to see what the heck was going on because it was a sharp pain. And this woman was standing about 4 feet away from me with her hand stretched out. I'm like, oh, God, what the hell is going on right now? She's like, oh, is that too strong? I'll back off. She backed off a couple feet, and the pain subsided a little bit. There were a few more things like that where there was warmth feelings, like just flowing through different parts of my body. And I got to say, I'd been to a bunch of folks. I know now not to go to kinesiologists. I didn't know then. But I went to them. I went to neurosurgeons. I got the shots that kill your nerves and all that kind of stuff. 3 months of no pain after that. The best I had was maybe a week, possibly 2 weeks. But I've had a lot of pain in my back ever since I was 14 or so. I'm just a twisted up individual, I guess, physically speaking. So I'd never experienced anything like that before, and I wanted your take on maybe physiologically what that was.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think about a year ago, if I last spoke with you when I was still in med school, this would have been over a year ago, and I've even had some changes in my thought process since then about subjective pain relief. Because we know that the mechanisms involved with chronic pain are more related to the neurological adaptations of how you perceive pain and not as much with actual mechanisms of pain in that specific area. Like, for example, back pain, you can have degenerative disease, like you could have arthritis, et cetera, that are pain generators, but your pain perception can be out of proportion to the actual injury that's done in that area. And the way we approach pain nowadays, especially now that we know a lot more of that, has to include more of those aspects related to perception of pain. And so we're terming all of this together as multimodal pain management. And I'm currently still in a position where I don't believe that Reiki has any physiological benefit. I don't think it has any medical benefit in that it cannot treat the actual mechanism of pain. It cannot reverse degeneration. It cannot reverse an injury, but I do think that some of those alternative mechanisms can affect psychologically how you view your pain, and that can help in a way. It can help you focus a certain amount of your attention on your pain, or how well your brain perceives that pain. And so there's a lot more data coming out now about what different therapies can do that to what degrees. And this is similar to things like aromatherapy, or like massage therapy is a bit different because it has some very physical elements to it that can, cause like dopamine releases, et cetera. But I do think that in conjunction with conventional medicine, there can be uses for some alternative treatments. However, the problem is then still the idea that the people practicing these methods are claiming that they're going to cure the problem, or claim that there's a physical or spiritual side to it. And so I think some of the nuance here then is, if we're going to use some of these therapies, how do we ensure that we have practitioners that are evidence-based practitioners? And that's difficult. But as far as your experience with the pain, I don't doubt that you had some benefit from it. I don't doubt that you had a certain perspective undergoing that. And so kind of going forward is like, where's the place for these things? What's the data that's upcoming with like how much pain relief do we expect to get and all of that? But do you have any kind of thoughts about any of that? I talked for a good minute there.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong really quickly, it sounds like what you're saying is that this is potentially kind of more or less a placebo type thing. Am I
kind of, but I do think it goes beyond placebo, because placebo specifically does not have any difference between that and the treatment, the non-treatment group. But this, we do see benefit in people that have alternative therapies, including acupuncture, including chiropractic, including these things, which those, each method has some risks associated as well. So that's something we have to balance out. Like, even if you get a similar amount of pain relief with chiropractic that you would with Reiki, you could argue that Reiki is actually a bit better because you don't have as many of those risks associated with chiropractic. But I don't think it's completely a placebo, but I do think it's more related to how you are thinking about your pain and how you are perceiving it. And I will freely admit that we don't know a whole lot about that mechanism. We're getting better, and we're learning more and more about how your brain takes in information and then sends signals to say, here's how we need to respond to these signals. But we're learning more about it. And I think these treatments relate to that process and not necessarily eliminating the pain generator, if that makes sense. Like if the injury itself is the pain generator, then this is just with the processing of that pain generator.
Interesting. Yeah. So the reason I asked that was I have this, I mean, I was thinking that going into it being doubtful would have eliminated any of that ability to be psychologically affected by, like a placebo-like sort of thing. Like I had my walls up, man. I was like, this is bullshit. I can't wait to leave. So I felt like I wasn't, I can't think of the word. I wasn't able to be influenced by the woo of it all. Like I'm very anti-woo. So I was very surprised. So that's what puzzles me.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. I don't know if Jimmy has other thoughts too and wants to.
Well, I don't necessarily have any thoughts. I was getting an education listening to you. I'm not qualified to speak on this stuff. And so, Nathan, to be honest with you, I don't know that I would have taken your call if Ben was not here, because I just, no disrespect, but I don't definitely have no qualifications to talk about medical treatments. But I do agree, or at least I can see where you're coming from as far as asking about a placebo effect, because before you brought that up, my injection into this conversation was me actually not going to be talking to you, but asking Ben, hey, what do you think about the placebo effect? Because I feel like there's a level of wishful thinking in all of us that maybe at some point we look for a positive outcome, and we are able to psych ourselves into experiencing that positive outcome. And I don't know, Ben, do you have any thoughts on that? And before I do that, before I cut back to you, I just want to say, there are studies, at least where prayer is concerned, where people who think that they're being prayed for tend to find some benefit because they think that the prayer is going to work, and that in itself is its own kind of placebo. And I just wonder if there's a relation. So Ben, yeah, that was what I would have asked you.
Yeah, it's possible. And I can't say exactly like how these things specifically work, if it is just an application of the placebo effect or if there's something else to it. But basically, like, we're doing a lot more study on this, and especially for things that are subjective, I personally, and this is my own opinion, that if it's something subjective and there's minimal risk to doing it, I don't have as much of a problem with somebody using that for subjective relief, like aromatherapy for anxiety. Like, I would rather you like smell some lavender oil than like have a panic attack and have consequences from that. Like, there are reasonable accommodations across these different things. And my biggest advice for people is, if you want to try something alternative, you should have like your medical doctor on board with you. They should know what you're wanting to do. They should be able to talk to you about, like, is this appropriate for you? Because there's some things that aren't appropriate for different medical conditions, but just be open with your team about the things that you need, what you're thinking of using those things for. And then they can determine, is this something that's going to be safe? And maybe it will help in addition to some other things. So I still have reservations a lot about things like chiropractic because it can be very dangerous. But I'm changing my mind on, like, where do we allow for some of these subjective things to help reduce suffering, even if they're not, like, especially for problems that we really can't treat at this point. Like, chronic pain is something that you have to manage and you can't really get rid of. So what can we do to make people suffer less? And again, going back to my initial point with that, how do we get practitioners that can approach this from a medicine, an evidence-based perspective? And actually, we do have some interesting overlap. There are some primarily Air Force physicians at this point, because the Air Force gives money to a lot of things. Primarily Air Force physicians who are board certified physicians who also do acupuncture. And they know where that line is of, like, we're using this subjectively, but we're also trained to treat medically. And specifically, one of them, actually there's one Army one too, I think, who's a physical medicine and rehab doctor, like, so board certified in like musculoskeletal injury, and who does a lot with chronic pain, who can do acupuncture. And so I think maybe that's where we just need to look at it, is getting qualified professionals who can triage those things, to maybe get more involved with that. But that's kind of my take on it.
Nathan, any reflection there? All right, cool. No, I'm following. I am just, I guess, going to remain baffled by why I felt what I felt, because I've never felt anything like that before or since. And I recognize that it may be psychological and some kind of, like, the brain does things that you don't expect it to be able to do sometimes. But, like, also I just wasn't open to it. So I guess I'm just going to remain baffled. And it's not like
we might not know.
Feel my experience. So.
Yeah, we might not know, and or maybe someday we'll find out a particular mechanism that relates to that, but
yeah,
we'll keep learning about it.
Yeah, important testimony of about why it could be good to get out of your comfort zone, maybe, and try some new things. You never know what's out there unless you give it a shot. It doesn't sound like you were doing anything that was going to be harmful to you, so good on you. I hope you're able to deal with your pain, and I hope you find some relief. And I really appreciate your call, Nathan, and I'm glad that you are a fan of Dr. Benz and you're waiting for him to come back and pop on. But we're gonna move on, Nathan. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for your call. And yeah,
thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
No problem.